Okay, I know what's going on. This is Sunday night, not Monday night, when I was going to talk to Vara, and then Randy was going to join me. So what I've got here is was going to be counting on taking the questions. So let me anyway. I want to play this one part in case somebody checks in later. I had this set up. I was going to say, here's what someone that is proven smart thinks about God. And there's no explaining why some people trust the Bible and some people know all about all forms of spirituality, but they don't choose one. Let's listen to, here he is, the tattooed monkey boy. That's what he calls himself. And in my book, he's pretty darn smart, one of the smartest guys I've ever heard of.
Until the 16th century. So, yeah, this Buddhism nonsense. No. When he was asked what to call his teachings, he called it Brahmayana, which means path to the absolute. So the first is God or the absolute, i.e. the agathon in Greek. And the second is also one, but it is not a separate one or another one. Obviously, that's completely impossible. We're not talking about two absolutes. We're not talking about a second God. We're not actually talking about a second agathon. We're talking about the extrinsic attributes of that which is most good and divine, because that which is divine is good, and in its divinity, it is itself and its attribute as one thing, not two things. And this is the difficult premise for people to understand behind emanationism. It's the inseparability, of course, between light and illumination. Nobody on this planet, or in any planet for that matter, has ever seen light. They only see illumination. And for people to wrap their mind around this abstruse metaphysics of theurgy and emanationism is quite difficult. But getting back to water, that third thing which joins the two, we have to ask ourselves the question, is water alive? Is water life itself? I mean, it is necessary for life to exist. And obviously, too, life is the consubstantiality between matter and spirit. We actually have the conjoinment of those two things. We actually have a third thing, which is consciousness. The ancient Pali word is metaphysically supremely accurate. The Pali word, an ancient dead language of which I'm a translator thereof, is vijnana. It's prefixual vi plus jnana. It is literally no different than saying agnosis. It's no different than saying illumination. It is a consubstantial temporal manifestation between light self, i.e. the transcendent self, which would be analogous to the signal, and that of matter. Of course, this radio is matter. But what this antenna is, not a perfect analogy, but nearly a perfect analogy, would be water. People say, I've told people that consciousness.
All right. Now, we understand Kenny, the man who is the expert on magnets and magnetism. Everything that I think I know about magnets, I learned from this man. I really think, we need to hear this again. I get it. He's got a globe in the background. He's not a flat earther. You are. But can you learn anything from what he's saying?
Cannot be satisfactorily united without a third. And that third thing is water. There is no life without water. By the way, before actually getting too deep into this video, the geometry of the water molecule is 180 degrees, 108 by 36 by 36. People say, well, when I go on any website, it'll actually say it's 104.5 degrees. Of course, it's never been physically measured for obvious reasons, but the reason why they actually say 104 is they're basing it upon the nucleus of the oxygen atom and the two hydrogen atoms, and that is 104, but it is based upon the region of influence. In other words, the absolute outer structure. I mean, that would be if I were to measure, these two lobes based upon the center. That's where they're actually getting the 104 degrees. It's actually based upon the outside. So the 104 is based upon the premise of the center of the oxygen and hydrogen atoms, but it's not there to be measured. It's there to be measured. So it actually is 108, because I see that every time I mention the fact that the water molecule is the only perfect incommensurable geometry in the entire universe. And that's not my idea or feeling. It is a fact. Water is absolutely incredible. I have spent so much time thinking about water, and why is it that the only perfect incommensurable geometry in the entire universe, which is the 108, 36, 36 degree triangle, which I actually also too have tattooed right here on the back of my hand, it's upside down. This in triplicate, of course, makes up the Pythagorean pentagram. Everything is complete in 5. That's what the Pythagoreans said, and it probably predates the Pythagoreans by who knows how many
2,000
thousands of
years.
years. And this is based upon the Fibonacci sequence, sort of the golden ratio, of which the first 5 digits, which excludes the number 4, because the number 4 is a time. Every ancient culture said time is the number 4, and that's the only digit that's actually missing out of the first 5 digits of the Fibonacci sequence, which are 1, 1, 2, 3, and 5. And that specific incommensurable geometry, which the ancient Greeks called the euristos dias, or the incommensurable one, because the first 2 digits of the Fibonacci sequence are 1, which is the absolute, or God, i.e. the agathon. Yeah, ancient Pali word for it is Brahma. When Gautama called his teachings, so what do you call your teachings, Gautama? Yeah, the term Buddhism didn't exist until the 16th century. So yeah, this Buddhism nonsense, no. When he was asked what to call his teachings, he called it Brahmayana, which means path to the absolute. So the first is God, or the absolute, i.e. the agathon in Greek. And the second is also 2-1, but it is not a separate one or another one. Obviously, that's completely impossible. We're not talking about 2 absolutes. We're not talking about a second God. We're not actually talking about a second agathon. We're talking about the extrinsic attributes of that which is most good and divine, because that which is divine is good.
Please understand that I take this to be the most high spirit God incarnate as Jesus Christ, because I believe the Bible. It's written on my heart. I hear his voice calling me to him and charging me to tell others, warn them, that voice you hear is Jesus. Having the knowledge without the actual bowing the knee is a no good.
And in its divinity, it is itself and its attribute as one thing, not 2 things. And this is the difficult premise for people to understand behind emanationism. It's the inseparability, of course, between light and illumination. Nobody on this planet, or in any planet for that matter, has ever seen light. They only see illumination. And for people to wrap their mind around this abstruse metaphysics of theurgy and emanationism is quite difficult. But getting back to water, that third thing which joins the 2, we have to ask ourselves the question, is water alive? Is water life itself? I mean, it is necessary for life to exist. And obviously, too, life is the consubstantiality between matter and spirit. When you actually have the conjoinment of those 2 things, we actually have a third thing, which is consciousness. The ancient Pali word is metaphysically supremely accurate. The Pali word, an ancient dead language of which I'm a translator thereof, is vijnana. It's prefixual vi plus jnana. It is literally no different than saying agnosis. It's no different than saying illumination. It is a consubstantial temporal manifestation between light self, i.e. the transcendent self, which would be analogous to the signal, and that of matter. Of course, this radio is matter. But what this antenna is, not a perfect analogy, but nearly a perfect analogy, would be water. People say, I've told people that that consciousness is the dipole antenna relative to water for the manifestation of light. And it goes no further than that. When somebody dies, the consciousness is cut off. but obviously too not the spirit. And the spirit, of course, is reflexively contained in the persona non grata and the memory, past life recollection thereof, kind of like erasing a hard drive. But in erasing a hard drive, you erase the table of contents. You don't actually erase the binary data that's on the platter, as a near perfect analogy. So we have the signal, which would be analogous to spirit, which of course is everywhere and nowhere. It's all around me, right? This, of course, is a constituent component of battery, which would be akin to food. We can't live without food. All the constituent components that make up the psychophysical body of, flesh, blood, so on and so forth. Then we have the third thing, which is impossible. You can have the best radio in the
So without a good antenna, and you can make your body into an antenna. Hello, Fractal Dust Bear. Hello to you, few others. Again, I was expecting to take questions. I thought it was Monday because of the holiday and everything, and I was excited about the topic. This was interesting. Peppers, black peppers, it all happened in 20 years?
Of cooking. And it might be the definitive guide to ancient Roman recipes. And in that book, almost everything uses black pepper as a seasoning. The spice was so valued in Rome that when the Visigoths attacked the city in the year 410, they demanded black pepper as a ransom. After the fall of Rome, it would stay in vogue in what's now Italy, and its trade would finance the rise of the city-states known as Venice and Genoa, which happens to be the birthplace of Columbus. Now, one side note just for fun, it does bear mentioning that black pepper probably shouldn't have been quite as expensive as it was, but the ancient Indian traders seem to have concocted some wild stories to drive up the price. Like claiming that the reason the peppers were black was because they grew in a fiery cave that would burn any who entered except only a chosen few, or any of a bunch of other fabric.
Wow. You know what was really interesting is how peppers spread across the world when they shouldn't have been able to. Check this out.
As the bird's eye chili, and it comes from a specific species of peppers called Capsicum annuum. And as it happens, it's the exact same plant from the same common ancestor as Mexico's jalapenos, India's Kashmiri chilies, and even Europe's sweet bell peppers. But here's the thing. Thai jungle curry actually uses two kinds of chilies that both grow wild in the mountains. And the second one from a different species altogether. Well, that's cousins with the same stuff found in the Middle East, the Philippines, and southern Africa. So how is it possible that an ancient Thai dish from the most remote parts of the jungle happens to use two unique strains of chili peppers that apparently have nothing in common? Well, to tell that story, we have to go back to the beginning. All the way back to the days when there was something else that was coveted for providing food.
Oh, the pepper. The pepper. So just a little bit more about the pepper.
These, like Motama and Ayutthaya. But it's all kind of just a guess because the parts of China where chilies would first take hold, Sichuan, so effectively. And that's because unlike most foods brought from the New World, chilies didn't have to be sold fresh. They could be dried and shipped almost anywhere for almost any length of time. It's hard to pinpoint exactly how and when chilies first came to China, but most historians guess it was in this dried form, quite possibly dried and carried by Silk Road traders coming from India by way of the Central Asian Plateau, or brought from markets in southern trading cities like Motama and Ayutthaya. But it's all kind of just a guess because the parts of China where chilies would first take hold, Sichuan, Hunan, Yunnan, and Guizhou.
Let's look at the storms that were predicted on February 2nd. What do you got, Max?
This might be a wedge tornado. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't seen any photos of it yet, but this could be a wedge tornado right now heading towards the northwest side of Princeton. Storm chasers on site are saying that this tornado is 2 miles wide. So we could have a 2-mile wide tornado right now moving through the northwest side of Princeton in Kentucky. If you guys see any reports about this, add me on Twitter at MaxVelocityWX. I'll try to see if we can confirm this. Well, we got a report of a tornado ongoing. We kind of already knew that. And this is still a tornado emergency near the Crider area, moving towards Crowtown and Princeton. Unfortunately, this is a violent tornado that is moving east. And somebody's telling me right now this is not... So one of my moderators that is actively looking at this is saying that this is not 2 miles wide. So that information is not correct. It is a stovepipe tornado, from what I am hearing. Again, so this is not 2 miles wide. Obviously, I don't usually look at chat, but a lot of people were just saying that. This is not 2 miles wide, but it is a stovepipe tornado. And again, that means that this is still a large cone at the bare minimum that is producing significant damage. What I'm hearing, though, is that this is a large lowering that is probably 2 miles wide. So we probably have a large 2 mile wide, bowl that is essentially here. The thing to keep in mind, though, is that the tornado itself is, again, going to be probably a stovepipe, something shaped like this, coming down from a very large lowering that is like this wide. And then this will be your cloud deck. That's at least from what I'm hearing. It doesn't really matter what the size is. I'm just trying to give you a perspective of what's happening here. All right. Again, we got a violent tornado in progress right now, which that debris ball, oh my God. I mean, this thing's huge. This debris stretches out over 3 miles. It's a 3 mile wide debris signature, which does not mean the tornado is that large, but this is if this doesn't give you an idea of how significant this tornado is, I don't know what will. It's a very dangerous tornado right now. I'm retweeting photos of the tornado on Twitter as well at MaxVelocityWX. Unfortunately, this is, again, a large tornado, and it is it's a big cone that's developing here. This is about to rip right through Crowtown and the northwest side of Princeton. We may end up getting a new tornado emergency on this. We'll see.
A new
We have a new tornado warning in
has
Illinois as
been
well.
issued.
This tornado has been on the ground for well over 15 minutes now, and it's still producing substantial catastrophic damage to the town of Crowtown and Crider. And we have a large destructive tornado. This debris signature is massive. And unfortunately, this is impacting a lot of people that are on the northwest side of Princeton. You need to seek shelter if you've not already. Get away from windows, get on the lowest floor possible, get into an interior room of your home or building if you are in this tornado warning. It's a very dangerous situation right now. Yeah, this is, again, a large stovepipe, but it's not a full-blown wedge that's on the ground. Regardless of that, you still need to be in your safe place. It really doesn't matter how large the tornado is, just for the record. It does not matter how large this tornado is. It is still a very significant tornado that is producing catastrophic damage right now, going towards Princeton, Kentucky. Debris right now is being lofted up over 30,000 feet into the atmosphere from this tornado. So this tornado is lifting debris up that high right now.
A new tornado warning has been
So
issued.
again, this is a catastrophic tornado. There's just no doubt.
You know what? This is almost capturing me too much, Azak. And I think I'm, since I've already admitted that, I thought it was Monday and Randy and Vara were going to be joining me with questions. I think I'm going to let this one go. And I did have some very interesting stuff I shared earlier. I think that anybody joining late should go back and watch the beginning of this. And you should remember that it is a flat earth nation. The golden age is past. If you're wondering, behind me are all the paths of the Mississippi that somehow they know based on, but the Mississippi has been forced into one path for way too long. And I think that this is part of that judgment on all leading and tying into Mudflood was Armageddon, because Mudflood was Armageddon, and me and my friends are never going to tell you anything else. Why would we? We're called and know we have your best interest at heart. Amen. Hallelujah. Aho. Aloha. Arriba.